All right, so I've got a bunch of questions that people have been leaving in the comments, and I try and typically answer those as quick as possible. But I wanted to take a little bit of time today and answer them here because I feel like they would be relevant for pretty much anybody. How do you find directors to work with when you have no credits? So I've said this before in other videos, but I feel like if you're just getting started and you have absolutely no credits, one of the best places to find directors to work with on an actual project is going to be film students. You know, reach out to different universities, but typically go to the local university anywhere around you that has a film department where you have film students, undergrad film students that are working on a pretty big scale project. What I found out when I was starting out is that a lot of the time these film students are just using stock music in their student films and their undergrad films. And usually if a director or anybody reaches out, they are more than happy to get a custom score. So it really benefits both parties. You get some material for your show reel. They get a custom score. It makes their final project look much better. And typically these undergrad students that are trying to finish up film school, they are trying to get that project into their first film festival. So again, it's just a really nice benefit for both parties. You know, if you're trying to go down the rabbit hole of like Facebook, composer groups or filmmaker groups, you know, the minute somebody says like, hey, I need a composer for this film, there's 100 comments and like, you're just going to bleed into the background. Nobody's going to notice you. Everybody's getting a DM with a SoundCloud link. So it's really hard to stand out there. But if you're offering a benefit to somebody that's like a film student, and especially if they have, a really good project, that's going to be a great piece of material for your show reel. Do film festivals actually lead to work? So yes and no. It's not just going to line up the opportunities for you, but if you have a film that you've worked on and it goes into a film festival, you definitely need to be at that film festival and you need to be actively networking with as many people as possible. What it does is it just kind of lends some credibility. If you're meeting somebody in a lobby and you're just kind of small talk, you're trying to meet some new people and network, it's going to come up, what did you do? Do you have a film here? Are you a director? Oh, I'm a film composer. But being able to say that you've actually got a film in the current film festival that you are both at just lends some credibility. Directors know each other, especially in the same city. A lot of them kind of share editors and DPs and all kinds of stuff. So, if you have a good reputation with one director, it's going to lead to referrals to other directors. So, if you can get those first couple projects, get them into film festivals, knock those projects out of the park, just kind of helps build your brand and your name. So while it's not a direct line to work, it is definitely going to help add credibility to your name. What does a composer website need on it? So honestly, I would keep it super simple. You need a picture of yourself. I wouldn't do an AI generated image. I would do an actual headshot. It's worth paying some money to get a couple good headshots. That and a bio about yourself. Definitely have your music. One of the biggest things that I will stress over and over and over is make it really easy for the director to find you and contact you. I personally have a big problem with anybody using like SoundCloud or anything like that, because like you click on that, or even like a YouTube playlist drives me nuts, because if a director clicks on that to hear your music, they're going to get ads or they're going to get redirected to like another service. They get pop-ups. My recommendation, have a simple website. It can be a one-page website, super clean. They don't care about all that fancy stuff. A one-page website. Honestly, just get a free ReelCrafter account. Like nowadays, that's all you need. Just use the one page of ReelCrafter. You don't even need a pro account. Just have that one page, have it clean, have a direct way to contact you. Also, if you're doing like link in bio, don't have like 30 things in there. Make it easy to reach out, let them know exactly what you do, and make it simple. If they have to do like any work, and I mean like one extra click to find you or contact you, they're gonna move on. They do not care. Nobody has the attention span. Make it simple. How much does a composer actually get paid for an indie film? Well, that varies widely. It depends on a lot of factors. How much music do they need in it? How complicated is it? What is their budget? That's the biggest factor. A lot of times they're not going to have a big budget. So you've got to figure out, are they paying you what it's worth? If you're having to write tons of, 15 minutes of orchestral music that's a lot of notes and very busy, and they're only paying you $100, it's probably not worth it unless it's some really important film that's going to a, really important film festival. That's something you've got to decide, but you've got to figure out what is your, minimum rate that you're going to take, depending on how much music they need. And is it worth building the relationship? If you're not making the money that is worth it to you for your rates, then is there another benefit that you're getting from it that might be in the form of, it going to a bigger festival? If you feel like it's worth it because it might be something down the road that's showing on Amazon or PBS, then that's something that you've got to decide on if you want to take a lower pay than your normal rate, but you've got to figure that out depending on the project. I think at the end of the day with this, you've got to figure out what is your minimum dollar amount per minute of music. In my opinion, if you have an idea in mind where you go, okay, if it's more ambient and it doesn't need as much work, this is my minimum amount that I'm going to charge per minute of music. Or if it's more complicated, busier sections, lots of like cutscenes and things like that, what is your minimum dollar amount per minute of music for that kind of film? So then you know where your baseline is. And depending on how important the project is, you can figure out if you want to take on that project or if you want to give a little bit, given if it's going to do any kind of like benefit to your career in the long run by taking less money. It really depends. What is your main in Overwatch? Ramatra all day long if I got to go with my like number one main, but if I've got a good team behind me and we're like grinding it out and I'm getting some healing, nothing beats a good Doomfist. If you're landing your cooldowns and like landing the combos really well, Doom's where it's at. Can't beat it. How long does it take you to write one cue? That really depends on how complicated the music is. It also depends on how complicated, I guess the like layout of the story is. So if it's something where I've got to be careful with like dialogue or maybe Foley or, any other audio that's going on, that's going to take a lot longer. Right now I'm in the middle of finishing up a film that had a big action scene. So with those kinds of things, you've got to be really careful because there's a lot of like hits, punches, Foley, sound design that's going on. So again, it really depends. If it's more orchestral and a lot of notes, I would say, if it's like 5 minutes, it might take me an 8-hour day to knock it out. Again, depending on complexity and what they're wanting. But if it's something like a little bit more ambient and more underscore and kind of background textures, again, I still want to put the time and the work into it and figure out what's going to be the right sound palette. But those usually don't take as long. I could do, maybe a couple of minutes and a few hours. How do you know where the music should start and stop in a scene? That depends on a lot of direction from the director and what they're wanting to go for. So if they kind of give me free reign to do what I want, I will just watch the film quite a bit, try and get a vibe. And in my head, I'm already starting to hear when I'm doing like my own spotting session, some tempos, some maybe melodies. I'll typically start with like a piano sketch or something like that, just to figure out where is there going to be music, how much harmony do I need, is it more underscore, and then from there I can kind of figure out where the music starts and stops. I mean, use your best judgment. That's what you're getting paid to do, is go with what vibe the film gives you. If you feel like you're needing to push that emotion with music and tell something that the acting can't, then it needs music. Otherwise, it doesn't. How do you make sample libraries not sound fake? So I've covered this in a lot of videos and I'll link a few of them down in the description, but I would say number one is going to be, choosing the best string and sample libraries that you have access to, obviously, but MIDI CC automation is going to be really key. Also, not using the same articulations all the time. Don't always use legatos and longs. You want to look at like when are tremolos appropriate, when do you do trills. You need to look at thinking about each individual line that you would shape is like, what would the player do? They're not just going to play long notes the whole time. They're going to play staccatos and then go into longs, and then they're going to play maybe harmonics, pizzicato. So if you think about it like that, that's how you're going to make it sound more realistic, is thinking like a player. Should I be cold emailing directors, and how do you follow up without being annoying? So this is actually a really, really good question. So I think it's fine to email directors or do a cold email to a director, but you need to know something about them. So what I mean is, like, let's say you find a director on Indiegogo, they've got a film that they're raising, $30,000 for, and you go, okay, they might have a musical budget. They're doing a style that I like. Go check out their other work that they've done. So before you just cold email and spam them, go look at what other films they did. Did they have a, YouTube channel? Have they gotten it in festivals? Like, what have they done? Like, what are they interested in? My name's Tommy. I'm interested to see if you have a composer lined up for this film that you're working on. I recently watched the last film, whatever the name of that was, and I loved specifically, state something you liked about it. I like this about it. That makes the email much more personal. They're going to get cold emails all day long, so you've got to do something to set yourself apart. And it just shows that you put in the time and care. They're artists as well, so they appreciate that. How to not be annoying? Typically the first email they're not going to reply back to. They're busy. So, they're working with a lot of different departments, even on a small budget film. So I would say it's okay to send a second email, maybe a third, but I wouldn't go past that. I usually would send one, maybe two, and then be done. If you don't get a reply on the first one, second one, just, something like, hey, I know you're super busy, just wanted to bump this in case it got buried. If you don't already have a composer lined up, I'd love to chat when it's, convenient for you. Always make sure you put your show reel in there as well, but don't keep going. Don't be annoying. How do you push back on a director without losing the job? So if you're already working on the project with the director, and let's say they're wanting to go a direction that you just completely disagree with, which every composer is going to run into. I talked about this a little bit in my course that I just put out. I always do what they want to do first. That is the most important. They are the client. You've got to remember that. But if you really feel strongly about it, do exactly what they want, and then maybe give an alternate version. When you send it over, be like, hey, here is the version you wanted. I just also wanted to give you this, to give you a choice to maybe go between the two, and let them decide. If they don't want it, that's it. You got to bury that. And that is what it is. It's their film. It's not your film. And you've got to remember that. Sometimes they might end up choosing the cue that you like better or the version that you like better, but it's their project. It's for them to decide, and you've got to take your ego out of it and kind of get over that. How do you handle a director who can't describe what they want? This is going to happen a lot, especially with newer directors. A playlist is great. A playlist, a reference to another film. A lot of times I would just say, hey, can you make like a Spotify or whatever playlist of 5 to 10 tracks that kind of puts me in the general direction? If they have no idea, then I would just say, maybe we can lock it down to, a genre, like, do you want more electronic? Do you want more orchestral? Maybe you make a playlist of what you have in your mind before you start writing and send it to them, because they may be like, I hate all of this. Don't use anything like that. The easiest thing would probably just be collaborating on a playlist or having them send you one over. It's not typically that big of a deal, but it'll at least give you an idea. If you're working with student filmmakers and you're just getting started, a playlist is going to be the best way to go, in my opinion. Do directors rehire you, and what makes them? Yes, a lot of my businesses come from repeat hiring from repeat clients. So what makes them rehire you is being as professional as you can, deliver more than they expected, basically. So every project, when I'm even sitting down to discuss the timeline of deliverables with the director, if they tell me that they need the music for the film delivered by December 1st, I'm going to try and have it delivered by, a week ahead of that, if not 2 weeks ahead. Because what that does is it basically tells them you're ahead of it. And also, if something goes wrong, you've got time to course correct. Try and deliver ahead of schedule. The other thing that I would say is, if they are emailing or contacting you, try and reply back as quick as possible. Maybe not right away, but within 24 hours, if you can. You don't always have to say, hey, I'm going to finish this tomorrow, but you can say, hey, I got your message. the date that I can have this done by is Wednesday, if it's like a Monday. So you can let them know where they're at in your schedule, but always reply within 24 hours. But at the end of the day, try and give them more than they expected out of what they asked for, and that will keep them coming back to you. If any of this was useful, I made a free checklist about actually getting paid for this stuff. It's completely free. I'll link it down below. So leave a comment. I'll try and answer it directly, and then I'll get a collection of them as they pile up and try and knock it out in a future video. See you in the next one.